This is a really fun conversation with Samantha Skyring, who's the founder and CEO of Oryx Desert Salt. And I learned a lot about salt. Stuff I already knew and a lot of stuff I did not know. I love playing dumb in these kinds of conversations where I can learn about something very simple like salt that I think a lot of health and wellness professionals know quite a bit about, but maybe not as much as we could know. And obviously salt is a really crucial mineral electrolyte for the body that's been villainized in sort of mainstream wellness narrative. This is really crucial for health coaches to understand more about because your clients probably think salt is bad for them. So we do talk about the health benefits of salt and sort of the ancient wisdom of our body's need for salt, but we also talk about how salt is sourced and some of the problems with that. Oryx Desert Salt is fascinating in its origin, and Samantha is really passionate about it. So you're going to learn a lot from her, as did I. So Samantha Skyring is the founder and CEO of Oryx Desert Salt, a sustainable and ethically sourced gourmet salt company based in South Africa. Her journey began when she embarked on a 7-month, 2,300-kilometer trek across the Namib Desert, where she encountered an oryx, the antelope that inspired her brand name. Her mission is to offer pure, unrefined salt harvested from ancient underground brine in the Kalahari Desert using environmentally conscious practices. Oryx Desert Salt is solar-dried, retains essential minerals, and has become internationally recognized under her leadership. Samantha is passionate about sustainability, fair trade, and educating people about the importance of mineral-rich, naturally produced salt. And like I already said, you're going to learn a ton about salt. Please enjoy this conversation with Samantha Skyring. Hi, I'm Erin Power. I'm a health coach, a health coaching educator and mentor, and your host of Health Coach Radio. This podcast delves into the art, science, and business of health coaching. Whether you're aspiring to land a coaching dream job or to embark on your own entrepreneurial adventure, we cover it all. Our mission is to help you grow your career, elevate your income, change the lives of the clients who need your help, and leave a lasting mark in this rapidly growing field. It's time for health coaches to make an impact. It's time for Health Coach Radio. All right, Samantha, I'm so excited to chat with you because I love salt. I really love salt.
Why? So good to hear that.
Why do we love salt so much?
Because we're salty. Our tears are salty, our sweat is salty, if we do a little paper cut, our blood is salty. We can't survive without it. And so the body craves what it knows it needs. And I think your audience are switched on, and our body has this incredible intelligence. And so it's talking to us, and it's telling us it's needing more in order to function and bring up your vitality and your vibration, and just to be able to think, that late afternoon brain fog, or rather have an afternoon nap, put a few grinds of good quality salt, so that's what we're going to get into your drinking water. And I actually had a really lovely experience the other day, when these non-planned experiments, and I had a late afternoon meeting, and I was so embarrassed, I kept yawning, and I was like, sorry, John, you're not boring, but and I'd yawn again. And I realized I hadn't had any water that day. So picked up my water bottle. It's got a bunch of Oryx salt in it. And I chugged a third of the bottle back and I stopped yawning. It was like, wow. So it just picked up my energy and allowed my brain to function again. And we carried on with a really good conversation.
Oh, wow. Quick fix. Well, I'm just curious, and I wonder if you can explain a little bit. I was curious about this stuff because, like, obviously we have a salt appetite. We do. We have that appetite, that craving, or that want for salt because it's so critically important for us. Mm-hmm. But like, I do hear this kind of tale from folks in the salt world, which is that it really does help with mental clarity and energy. But the thing is, like, salt itself doesn't have any like energy. It doesn't have metabolic energy, fuel. Right? So how did it clear up your brain when you were meeting with John the other day? How did that work?
So sodium chloride and the minerals and trace elements actually create like a positive negative charge. and it needs that for the body to absorb it and for your cells, your intercellular fluid to be hydrated properly. So actually, if you're just chugging down a bunch of water, you're not hydrating properly, and in fact, it can actually be damaging. You can be flushing all of your organs, especially your kidneys, and then it has to sort of leach some minerals out in order to bring it back again, because your body's really clever. So it, creates it in the way that the body requires it. And so then it's got to rebalance, but it's taking from somewhere. So if we are supporting our bodies and creating an electrolyte, essentially, because that's really what electrolytes are.
Yeah.
The predominant ingredient is it's sodium. It's quite curious. There are a few brands that are using table salt, which really baffles my brain, because table salt didn't exist until, just over 100 years ago. For millennia, we've been using salt from the oceans or salt from different sources, like even in the Kalahari Desert where Oryx comes from. And I'm just going to quickly put this up, because this is video recorded, right? Not only audio.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, great. So this is called Oryx Desert Salt, and literally it comes from the desert, but we'll get into that just now.
Yes.
And 1,000 years ago, this little bottle, which is 100 grams, 3.76 ounces, was equivalent to its weight in gold, because people understood the value and how essential it is for our survival, that's how valuable it was. But then it started being created in these vast volumes, and it's almost like a binding. So they put it into paint and paper and textile and PVC. C stands for chloride. So then they're making it in these huge volumes, and then it lost its value. And also because some of the salt we found on the shelves, it really should just say salt and not salt with anything else, because salt naturally absorbs moisture, is hygroscopic. It's gift to our bodies. So if we're then putting a chemical to stop it from being hygroscopic, we're actually taking salt's gift away from our body. But it was the start of the food convenience era, but it wasn't taken into consideration that it wasn't so convenient for our bodies.
Yeah. So we jumped right into talking about salt, and I want to get into Oryx and your salt company, but just because we're here now, I wonder, I'm super, super curious about this. And it's not something I know a lot about, to be honest with you. Like I'm not one of these know-it-all health and wellness professionals that just knows everything about everything. So I love learning about this stuff. So table salt isn't real salt, is what you're kind of saying, right? Is it concocted? Like, how is it made, or where does it come from? If quality salt comes from the sea or from the Kalahari Desert or wherever we're getting it from the earth, then where is table salt coming from?
So I call table salt fake salt, because it looks like salt and it tastes like salt, but it's adulterated. It's processed. So it also can come from the oceans, or it can come from ancient underground salt lakes. But it then goes through this radical process. So it's heated up to, I don't know, one article that I read, it was like 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of it's bleached because they want it white. They strip the minerals and the trace elements because they're impurities. And so what's left is just sodium chloride. So it isn't a whole food. And I think that's the sort of the problem that we've got into, in the last 100 years, 50 years, 20 years, where I think there might only be 10 or 15% worth of actual food on our supermarket shelves, because otherwise it's just a bunch of chemicals put together, and it looks like food and it tastes like food, and a lot of it's really delicious. But is it nourishing the body? Is it really able to, nourish us in a deep way, or is it just a bit of a stomach filler? And I'm not sure any of us really know what like optimal health and vibration and vitality feels like, unless we are living on a regenerative farm and eating a lot of salt, because I think, we have been indoctrinated with salt is bad for us. And
Yes.
and I actually think we should split salt, because I don't think table salt should be referred to as salt, because
Right.
it is adulterated. But yes. So it would be like me giving you balsamic vinegar with your beautiful medium rare filet steak from a regenerative farm, and in your wine glass, and you're going, but why are you giving me this? But it's made from grapes. Like, what are you complaining about? It's just something, a bit of a similar metaphor. So table salt is kind of sodium chloride, and then you get salt, which is not processed, not refined, nothing's added, nothing's taken away. And but then we've got to sort of, for me, get into the next conversation is, what is the source of your salt? Have you looked
Right.
into where it comes from? And how have we looked after where it comes from? And are they still clean? So that's the big
Right.
question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, when you're describing table salt, that was great. It's a processed food product, which is just par for the course. Like, of course it is. Everything is like, but to me, table salt doesn't even taste like salt. Actually, I don't think it does. It tastes salty, but it doesn't taste like salt. So, but anyway, so because you just brought up, you just used this balsamic vinegar metaphor, it made me think of the beautiful balsamic vinegar I get at the special balsamic vinegar store, where I also get my olive oil, because I want my olive oil and my balsamic vinegar to be like pure from the appropriate sources, because all the grocery store olive oil apparently is soybean or something. Like, you've heard that, right? That conspiracy.
Well,
So
actually, I was at a friend's house for dinner, and she had this bottle and it had extra virgin olive oil on. And I looked at the ingredients, and it had 1% of extra virgin olive oil. That should be illegal. And I think even table salt, I don't think it should be allowed on a supermarket shelf.
But then I've heard too that like some of these pink Himalayan salts in the grocery store are not authentic either. So now you're talking about sourcing. So this is something you're an expert in, right? I mean, so we should probably, by way of introduction, remind people who you are. You are the CEO of Oryx Salt. Yeah.
Hmm.
And you have this whole origin story about how you developed your salt company. I definitely want to explore that. But as a salt expert or salt guru, talk to me about sourcing. And I guess, how did you learn about how to source salt and where the good salt is and where the not so good salt comes from? And I'm just really curious about sourcing quality salt.
Hi, Thanks. Okay, so firstly, thank you for calling me an expert. And I think my expertise has come from, and when I share with you where the salt comes from, this passion. But I'm not a doctor. But everything that I'm going to share with you, if you do your research, so this is a little bit of a 101, and I've kind of done the research. And actually, if you sit and you really think about, the fact is, our tears are salty, our sweat is salty, and obviously that needs to be replenished. And if you run in your black t-shirt on a hot summer's day, you're going to end up with little white, they look like waves. And that's the minerals and trace elements that are leaching out of your body. And of course, that needs to be replaced. So it's pretty obvious you can't replace it with a table salt that's been stripped of its minerals and trace elements. I mean, it's common sense. So so this salt, the Kalahari Desert of southern Africa. So hello everybody from the very, very southern tip of Africa. I live in Cape Town. It's winter. It's 8 o'clock at night. I think, Erin, what time is it your time?
It's 12 noon, middle of the day.
So a friend was actually selling the salt in bulk overseas. And I had just come out of an 8-year period where I'd been doing drumming workshops with children across South Africa as an empowerment project. It was called Transformation Through Celebration. So it was an attempt to give children from very rural, very disadvantaged communities a heart-brain coherence and a heart coherence. I'm sure you might have had the experience of drumming with 100 or 500 or 1,000, maybe not 1,000 people, but we'd have 1,000 children drumming together. And there was this absolute incredible joy that they would experience. And they had really hard lives. Many of them didn't have parents because of HIV/AIDS. So I'd come out of that. There'd been a financial crash. I was a single mom. I was a new single mom. I had to leave a very dysfunctional relationship, which thank you, because if it had been a happy, secure relationship, Oryx Desert Salt would not be available in Whole Foods across America or on Amazon in Canada. So I love looking at life in retrospect and the blessings, these, hard moments, these seemingly crises, but actually they're junctures and crossroads in our lives and almost our soul's journey, bringing us to where we are. And so I started, when I got back, I'd already created a brand. And then I was so intrigued. In fact, I actually sold my house and I bought 34 tons of salt. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking, but I was committed, I was all in. And I think they'd had some big storms up in the region. And so I was like, okay, well, I've just got to make sure I've always got salt. And then I went up to the salt pans in order to connect to the source. And it was a really powerful experience. And because the drive from Cape Town there is about 19 hours. If I was to fly, the drive is 2.5 hours. So the whole Kalahari, it's 9 million square hectares, which is 1.5 times the size of Texas. So to give you a sense of scale, I think Texas is one of the biggest states in the US.
Yeah.
So for 175 miles, you just drive and keep driving and keep driving. And there's these incredible, beautiful red sand dunes and blue sky. And then it's off. It's on a dirt road I've got to convert backwards. That would be about 30 miles. And then another 7 miles off through some farms. And then suddenly there's this magnificent 5,000 hectare salt pan. And actually, the first time I went, we were all in a van together, about 9 of us. And we'd been chit-chatting the sort of last half an hour. We could feel that we were close, we had all napped. And then as we came up over this rise and saw this just expansive white, there was complete silence. And it was almost like this respect, this like ode to the salt pan. But there was something reverent about it.
Yeah.
And then I actually went up last year to do a documentary, and we were gifted a thunderstorm, which is rare in the desert. And it really felt like a gift from the gods, because our 2-day photo shoot had been shifted times. And that wasn't something I could have put on the production plan. It wasn't like, right, thunderstorm, second afternoon for a photo shoot. Right. And it just absolutely downpoured. There was lightning and thunder. It lasted about 20 minutes, and we went outside, and there was this beautiful raw earth smell from the rain on the earth, and the sky was the most incredible colors. And then I went behind the chalet and looked out in the direction of the salt pans. I couldn't see them because they were behind the sand dunes, and there were 2 double rainbows. And I just suddenly had this feeling of how the salt, because our salt is actually sun-dried. It isn't oven-dried. So it still has a percentage of moisture, and how it absorbs these beautiful elements in the desert. And what's fascinating is, so they discovered underneath the salt pan a 55 million ton salt lake, or an aquifer.
Salt lake. Oh.
Yeah, so it's a living, active lake. It's fed and renewed and sustained by 3 subterranean rivers or streams called strivers, a new word, that flow 100 and 300 feet underground. And they flow through rock strata that are tested at 280 million years old. Okay, so if you can kind of just close your eyes and just drop into this vastness, this absolute beauty, this beautiful salt pan, this underground lake. The rivers are like flowing through the earth, through Mother Earth, picking up the minerals and the trace elements. And there are 2 really fascinating things, is that when we draw it up onto the salt pan, so now it does get pumped onto the salt pan, and which means it's living. So, we can get into the whole conversation around water and the charge that water has when it comes from underground, like spring water versus tap water. So that in itself has got a charge. Right. And then this brine salt water is oversaturated, which means that it crystallizes in only 4 weeks in one lunar cycle. It lies in the pan through a dark moon, under the stars, through a full moon, and it crystallizes into the crystals that we put into the salt grinder. And so in that time, it's absorbing the beautiful elements, and we add nothing and we take nothing away. So, and I have had it tested. I went to somebody who trains the craniosacral therapists. He does kinesiology, and he's tested the vibration of it. It's a high vibration, high frequency kind of activated salt, because it hasn't been through ovens. It's literally a
Very
gift
alive.
from Earth.
Yeah.
Balanced by nature.
Gosh, the way you describe it, it sounds just, mystical, sacred, something. Hey, it's Erin. Let me ask you something. How's your coaching business going? Are you struggling to get consistent clients? Or maybe you've got a few, but you want to grow more predictably? Well, that's why we created the Health Coach Client Blueprint. It's a step-by-step system that walks you through exactly how to attract and convert paying clients so you can finally build the business you've been dreaming of. It gives you clarity, confidence, and structure, whether you're landing your first clients or scaling your practice. I want you to check it out at primalhealthcoach.com/HCCB. And because you're a Health Coach Radio listener, you can use the exclusive code HCR100 for $100 off your enrollment. This offer is just for our listeners, so don't miss it. I actually have a few maybe kind of dumb follow-up questions, but I love to be the dummy to learn things. But before I get into that, I do have a question, and this is so out of my wheelhouse. I know a lot of people listening are really knowledgeable about this stuff, and potentially Samantha, you are as well, but it occurs to me, okay, salt is a crystal, and I know that in the realm of crystals, the moon plays a role in activating or charging the crystals. Because I just thought it was really beautiful how you described, the brine saltwater crystallizes in a month, one lunar cycle. I mean, is there something there? Is there something lunar involved in terms of the mineral makeup or the energy of this product?
So I think many of us at this time have heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto, the Japanese scientist who did the experiments on water. I think you can buy a lot of bottles now where you've got love and trust, and where you can write your own words on. And in fact, it takes us back to the simple act of prayer and grace and blessing over our food. And that is almost, you're blessing your food, you're blessing the chef, the hands that made it. And that is an act of almost putting intention and love into our foods. So Dr. Masaru Emoto did tests on bottles where he both wrote words, and he put an intention and a thought. And there were positive words and then there were negative words. And when he took a drop of the positive words and he froze it and crystallized it, and he took macro photography, all the positive words looked like magnificent salt crystals. And you can, he wrote books. He did lots of many experiments. And then when he took all of the negative words, so envy and jealousy and guilt and shame, the crystalline structure of the water has no form. It looks dead. So his message to the world is your thoughts are changing the crystalline structure of your body. And so we really need to observe and watch and be mindful of how we're talking to ourselves, that inner critic, that we literally are changing our makeup. And then I was introduced, just somebody, shared with me, Veda Austin. She's based in New Zealand, and she's been having conversations with water for 15 years. Anyway, so I started following her on Instagram and seeing some of the experiments, and literally taking a petri dish and having a conversation, or putting a thought or asking it for a message and freezing it. And there's a whole process, and there are lots of YouTube clips on how to do it. So I was really fascinated. So in fact, my very first experience of a salt pan was I traveled 5 months in the adjacent country called Namibia, and I ended up on a salt pan, an untouched salt pan on full moon and walked across this pan by the light of the moon, and it felt like I was walking through a bed of diamonds. It was so sparkly and bright and crystalline, as you said, these perfect geometric shapes. So when I think of the salt pan, I do think of the moon. There's that connection, that intention to a degree. And so I took a petri dish and I put spring water and a crystal of Oryx, and I put it in the freezer. It took longer to freeze, kept checking it because salt water takes longer. And then I went and put it over just a lamp, and I took my cell phone and I took a photograph. And if we can, maybe when you post this, I'll send you an image that we can add to it of the picture of the salt and the picture of a full moon. And it's like, it's literally jaw-dropping. It's so incredible. So yes, Erin, you are so absolutely right. It literally absorbs the energy of the moon and the sun and the stars and the wind. So it's elemental. And it's so beautiful because I do quite a lot of shows, and often in spaces like Dave Ashby's biohacking conference in the US. I've been there for 4 years. And it's a beautiful community of people who've done their research. They want to upgrade. They want to take care of themselves. They want the best quality products. And I've had so many people come up to the stand who've discovered it at Whole Foods, and they've used it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. They didn't know anything about the product, and they feel the difference. So that for me is really fascinating. And yeah, I'm so sorry I haven't sent you salt yet. I will.
No worry. I'm very excited to try it because for me, I want to know what it tastes like. And also when you say, what does it feel like? These folks that, what do people notice?
Okay. So on the taste, we were talking just now about table salt, and you were saying that it doesn't really taste like salt. And I think it's because it doesn't have the minerals and the trace elements. It seems to pick up only the saltiness on your tongue.
Yes. It's sort of like a hollow, incomplete saltiness is kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah, that feels very apt. Whereas Oryx, and I've done thousands of, like, I just call it the grind taste test. And usually at a show, I ask people to give me a tequila fist because they've been shaking hands and touching banisters, and so this is a clean part. And I grind Oryx on, and they taste it, and they're like, that's salty, and and then I give them sea salt, and it's any sea salt, and I don't even use table salt because that would just be too harsh. And then they have sea salt, and there's such an interesting. Because I do believe in the body's innate intelligence, and there's kind of this, like, their face puckers and they're like contract, and they're like, oh, that's salty, and then there's this sort of aftertaste that comes, and so Oryx, some chefs call it a sweet salt, but it seems to open up all of the taste buds. So when you put it over your food, it's almost like a flavor enhancer, and it's full, and it's gentle, but there's the body again is like, I recognize you. That feels good. And on my email signature, I say powered by desert salt, because I have an incredible amount of energy always. And I think, like, I really feel like I am on purpose, that this is my soul work, and I can affirm that in a way, in that, so this beautiful creature is called an Oryx, and my lovely son, when he was 7, painted this for me. So that's kind of what they look like. Oh, very sweet. And they live in the Kalahari Desert in these incredibly harsh, super hot regions with minimal water. And I traveled in Namibia for 5 months, but I had one particular experience where I had 2. The first one, I was actually sitting on top of a sand dune. We decided to sleep in the car park of a huge, it must have been about 20, so hard to translate. It is just a vast desert with these magnificent red sand dunes. From the gate into the park was an hour just through these sand dunes. So we were sitting, and we had an umbrella over us, and we saw 2 oryx and they were two bulls. The one was chasing the other because we could hear they were grunting and kind of almost roaring in the distance. And then they went behind a sand dune, and, that was incredible to see them in the desert running. And then, we forgot about them. The next 3 minutes or so later, these two oryx ran up the hill and literally skid to a stop about 9 feet away from us. And so we were quite shocked. I mean, they are, they're about 9 feet tall with their horns. Their horns themselves are 3 feet. And they're dangerous. They can literally put their heads down and just skewer you like a kebab, and they were heaving, and we could smell them. And then we just had this moment of presence. I don't know if it was 30 seconds or a minute. And then they ran off as friends. And I searched the other day, like, how big this desert is. And I mean, it's so vast. The fact that they didn't run, 30 or 50 feet that direction or to the other side. They literally ran into my path and my friend's path. And then once I had chosen this magnificent masked creature as the logo, I did some research, and I discovered some of them can go their whole lives without drinking water, but they can't go weeks without licking salt. It is so essential for their survival in the desert. And their hair actually absorbs the moisture and the dew at nighttime in the desert. And they hydrate hypodermically, which is also just another miracle. So, this kind of, this omen, this animal, the spirit animal, kind of came, chose it as, this beautiful masked creature. And it literally has a heart on the top of its head, which I just think is so beautiful. And then I discovered that they lick salt frequently in order to survive, but they don't need water. It was just, just quite fascinating.
Gosh. Well, I'm really intrigued by this desert. I mean, this is one of the dumb questions I have, actually, because I have never seen a salt flat. I've never been on one. I've probably driven past one somewhere, somewhere in a prairie somewhere, I don't know if that's real. I don't know. I know nothing. So these salt flats emerge from the underground lakes and rivers, and they come up to the ground and then dry, and that's how we get salt. Is this an infinite resource? Like, we never going to run out? Like, where does it come from? You know what I mean?
Sometimes I wish we had a permanent drone, like if there was a satellite in the sky from 1,000,000 years ago, there's some like to see the Grand Canyon over 1,000,000 years, in a time lapse, I'd love to see that. So it's a bit like, so interestingly, Salt Lake in Utah is an ancient solidified salt lake. So, at some point how many trillions of years ago, when the earth was just one, there was one continent before it split. And, maybe if the story of, the Noah and the ark is true, then at some point all of the earth was covered in was covered in the ocean and the sea. So I'm not a historian or a geologist, but this particular region in the desert is just, there's salt lake, there's not salt lakes, but there's salt flats everywhere. So it's a little bit like gold, and in certain regions of different continents, you get gold and you get platinum and you get titanium, and so they're different minerals that are sourced from different places. Although what's really fascinating for me is that salt is available across every continent. There are little pockets of it everywhere. And for me, it's because, animals need it. I mean, and all farmers know this, you give your sheep salt blocks to lick, and your cattle and your horses. So, here they give we give animals this raw salt, and yet we go and eat a processed, refined salt. It's like, but surely if we looked after ourselves as well as we looked after our animals, sometimes we'd also choose a salt that is pure and so on. So there was a question you asked about the source. So the beautiful thing is that when we pour up the salt brine water onto the lake, and it's come from underground, and it's been replenished and resourced from these underground rivers, is that it hasn't been touched by human hands. Right. And the closest town is 175 miles away. So that's a really rare situation, because we have got our very dirty fingers into almost every corner of the planet, and we haven't looked after our beautiful earth and our environment. And the oceans, which is obviously where we have resource salt from predominantly in our history, because it's so prevalent, in the ancient days, even if you go to certain places, the salt water can collect in rocks, and you can see, you can actually pick up crystals of salt. But the oceans are so polluted now, they're polluted with plastic, the fertilizers and the pesticides and the glyphosate runoff from all of the farms, that ends up in the oceans. In fact, I don't know if you've done much research, but there's pharmaceutical contamination in the oceans now. And I met a marine biologist in the UK, and he works with oysters in Ireland, and he tested the oysters, and they've got opioids and contraceptives in them. So because, I know, it's frightening. It's so, so shocking. In fact, the cruise liners, because, the countries supposedly, not always, are supposed to protect the shorelines, which we don't. Right. There's sewage runoff many places. But I don't know I'll have to research, but how many miles off the coastline is international waters? And so cruise liners can just dump, how many people, 3,000, 5,000 people can fit onto a cruise liner? And apparently out in the deep ocean, they can just dump, which is it's bizarre. We just, in fact, even the fact that we flush our excrement out with fresh water is even a really bizarre concept. That we've kind of, we've allowed ourselves to do that. It's a bit weird. Water that is should be sacred and is so essential to our survival. We use it for that. It's a bit, anyways, we're a weird species, I think.
We are. So, gosh, you bring to light the fact that, man, we really have messed up this planet. Like, the oceans are done for. Not to be fatalistic, but so. Because I was going to ask you the question, like, from a nutritional or energetic perspective, how does desert salt differ from sea salt? But the big factor is the sea is a dumpster fire. Like, the sea is dirty now. And now this and the salt flat in the Kalahari Desert has been untouched. Is it truly pure? Can we say that it's pure? Do you know what I mean?
And clean. For me, it's pure and clean. And I call it naturally organic, because you actually can't certify salt organic because it's natural. We don't, yes, we pump it up, and it's sort of, we help it, create it in a way, but the FDA don't allow us to certify it. But this is, you can't really see it, but this is a bottle of homeopathy. My son's nearly 18, and he's only grown up on homeopathic remedies, or predominantly. And it's my go-to when I travel, and it's a 19-hour flight from South Africa to the US, and if I the time lag, and if I get sick, and when I get sick, it predominantly goes to my chest. I get a sore throat, and then I get chesty. That's my weak spot. So I always travel with 3 remedies: throat, bronchial, and sinus. And I've had many moments where I've been at sort of 3, 4, 5-day trade shows, you're inside a conference area, and my throat starts getting very dry and scratchy. And I get concerned. One, I've got to talk a lot and share the story a lot. And I've many times in the evening where I've kind of, my throat's been, when you kind of lower your chin because your throat's it's hard to swallow. I dose myself up many times before I go to bed, and I fall asleep with a few of the pillies underneath my tongue, and they dissolve. And I wake up with no sore throat whatsoever. And then if I don't catch it in time, or I'm lying there and I'm like, oh, my throat's sore, but I'm so tired and I don't want to get up. And then the next morning I can feel it's starting to drop into my chest. So from a homeopathic perspective, and what's really interesting with homeopathy is the most potent dose are the ones that are diluted the most. And so if we consider what's in the oceans, it's filled with whatever we've dumped in it. And there's a resonance of that. There's a frequency of that. So personally, I mean, there are these lovely, I'll be sending you some. And I hope a lot of your audience are in the US and not everyone's in Canada. But in fact, actually, I do have a distributor who's taken some of these. So I'll maybe put the link. So these are the little baby travel shakers. Erin, you'll be getting a box, but they are available in World Market in the USA nationally. I travel with my salt everywhere that I go, because if I go to a restaurant and they've got sea salt, I'm just like, thank you, no thank you, I'll have my own. But yes, we can kind of have a look at how we've damaged the earth and the planet and what we've done. But I really believe that nature's so much bigger than us, and if Gaia, the earth, decides that we really are annoying her too much, she can shake us off like fleas off a dog's back. We can, sure. But I really believe that nature can regenerate. So, in fact, didn't we see that in COVID? Weren't there were so many incredible videos where...
Yes, you're right, of nature creeping back into cities and things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in China, the children saw blue sky for the first time.
Yeah.
And there was a gentleman, I think, in Pakistan who had lived there his whole life. He was 25 years old. And suddenly he could see the Himalayas. He'd never seen the mountains. And they were in the distance. And that was, it wasn't that long, maybe 6 months or something.
Yeah.
And how things went back to an equilibrium or a beautiful balance. So we think we're powerful, and we certainly have done damage, but I think in the greater scheme, I don't think we can. We can. And some animals will go extinct, but I believe that, the planet will just regenerate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is an ancient wisdom that you're referring to, the ancient wisdom of nature, of planet Earth. And then we have this ancient wisdom in our bodies too. And so this kind of gets to me into the realm, and I think I mentioned to you before we pressed record that I had a client, one of my clients today, she asked me a question about feeling more thirsty since we changed her diet. She's like, is it normal to feel more thirsty? I've been drinking a lot more water lately. And I said, well, have you been putting salt into your diet? Because, that's all part of the hydration package, shall we say. And she had this perspective that she doesn't want to consume salt because it's not good for her. And she's worried about having a heart condition. So there's a major discrepancy between the ancient wisdom of our body and the ancientness of salt, and then the modern conventional perspective on salt. And I'm just curious if you have a boilerplate, shall we say, rally cry as to why we have this discrepancy, or how health coaches can help their clients navigate it. Remember, our audience is health coaches, so I know my audience's clients are asking the exact same question my client asked, which is, I'm not supposed to eat salt, it's bad for you. So how do we square this, the ancient wisdom of the body, the ancient wisdom of minerals, with what the modern perspective is?
I mean, it's so sad that this narrative has been put out into the world, and we can go down a whole lot of conspiracy theory rabbit holes if we want to do, but we won't. Nature, firstly, wouldn't create a product that is so prevalent all over the world. And if we weren't supposed to have, such access to it. And so Dr. James DiNicolantonio is a cardiac researcher, and he's written a book called Salt Fix. So any of those who are really intrigued by this conversation and salt, it's an incredible book to read. What James kind of wrapped it up in one thing is that the wrong white crystal got the bad rap, and that actually, sugar's doing a lot of damage. But, the Hippocratic Oath, which is what all doctors are supposed to, have given their oath to, and part of that is food is thy medicine. Yeah. So if we go back to the way things were, where, we preserved our meat, our vegetables, our pickled, our sauerkraut, just cabbage and salt and water creates this prebiotic, probiotic for our system, and we preserve our vegetables. And so if we were living really in a very natural way, and we were living with the seasons, we would need to pickle our
Yeah.
vegetables, for the winter season, which means that in winter we'd be having a lot more salt. Summer we would need more salt as well because maybe it's hot and you chop wood, carry water, but you would be eating some of those vegetables, or you'd be really eating veggies that are from the earth, that have been well nourished with, good, all of
Mineral
the
rich
cuttings,
stuff.
and
Yeah.
so. And table salt is bad. So I believe that when they talk about salt is bad, it's a salt that's been processed and adulterated. Yes,
Right.
that's bad. But a mineral rich salt that is, not processed or been in a factory, the body absolutely, it needs. And again, I think it's back to our beautiful taste buds that talk to us. So it is coming back to that intuitive eating, and wanting salty is not going for the packet of crisps,
Doritos. Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And I think often what happens is when we're hungry, actually we are thirsty, and if we were drinking water that came out of the mountain springs, it would have minerals and trace elements, and it would have some sodium in it as well. So, then we'd be hydrating, properly, but we're drinking tap water, we're drinking
Yeah.
bottled water that's sat for, sometimes months, so it's had no aliveness to it. So, and you mentioned earlier that salt is sacred, and Khalil Gibran, he said there's something sacred about salt because it is in our tears and our sweat. And so we have what we call our corporate logo, which is this. If you can imagine taking out the Oryx Desert Salt and you just extended the line in the middle across, you would have two semicircles in a circle. Now, that is the ancient alchemical symbol for salt. So before we, change things with our food, in ancient sort of Veda times, when there was something that really represented, the symbol represented what the product was, salt was perfect balance. And I'd like, to just encourage your audience and people to experiment. You've heard this, but now there's really a whole lot more information available to us. We're in this incredible age of the internet. Here we are
Yeah.
talking to each other 8 hours apart on a timeline. But try it for yourself. And in fact, and we've got beautiful blogs on our website. Did you know that pregnant women, their blood volume increases 30%? So again, kind of common logic. Your blood's got salt in it. Your amniotic fluid is a salty medium. It's not just pure water. So the taste buds in pregnant moms diminish because the body's saying, eat more salt. So that, often we hear there are
Craving
these
pickle.
really interesting, weird and wonderful
Yeah.
cravings that happen in pregnancy. And we were in touch with an endurance athlete, and she had given birth and she was really struggling to breastfeed. Anyway, so she started putting a whole lot she actually was putting an electrolyte into her water, but this particular electrolyte is actually the main ingredient is Oryx Desert Salt, plus some magnesium and some potassium. And suddenly her breast milk started flowing. So, we've got each one of us is unique. We can't say this is how much you need and you need and you need. How active are you? What's your weight? What's your body fat ratio? Your muscle ratio to your body? But it is logical that
Yes.
salt is essential to our existence, and
100%.
we are these electromagnetic beings, and that's why I said on my my email signature is powered by desert salt. And if you start experimenting with salt, you'll probably find that your energy levels pick up, and there is something that you feel more vital. So you ask the questions, what do people feel? And it is this just sort of renewed vitality, because this particular salt just really has this high vibration, this high frequency. It's it's almost imprinted by the magic and the beauty and the spaciousness of the desert, and untouched by humans, which is very special.
Oh, I'm so in. I just want to reflect back a few things that you shared there that I thought were really powerful, because I do want this to be, actionable for health coaches that are trying to answer salt questions with their clients. So First of all, you just shared one of my favorite perspectives, which was if salt was trying to kill us, it wouldn't be in our bodies and the earth wouldn't provide it. Like, it's just, it wouldn't be an essential mineral if it was trying to kill us. So we have to just use a little bit of logic there. I always do that with, and I don't know what your perspective on this, but whenever a client suggests that, for example, cholesterol is bad or animal protein is bad, it's like, well, it's our biologically appropriate diet. It doesn't make sense. And the liver produces cholesterol, so obviously it's not a toxic compound or the body wouldn't make it, that kind of thing, right? It's just, just a nice little logic puzzle to play. But one thing that you said that I thought was really interesting, this is just a personal perspective. So you said sometimes when we're hungry, we're actually thirsty. And so for a long time, I've really pushed back on that because it's like, well, no, I think a hunger signal and a thirst signal are different. But now it's like, well, a hunger signal is a body's demand for nutrients. There's certain nutrients that strenuously leverage appetite. Protein is one of them, and I would say salt is another one. Very, very big appetite leverage point. So wanting something, I think I want something. Well, possibly it's salt. It's possibly just you haven't had enough salt and your body's putting out this little want signal. Now, in the modern food environment, I hear this all the time, and you reference this as well. Oh, I wanted something salty, so I broke into the bag of chips. It's like, well, that's not exactly what the body was looking for. It just wants, it just needs, not even want, it needs its certain complement of salt. And if we're not reaching those levels in our day-to-day life, we're going to be chasing these sort of imperceptible, hard to pinpoint cravings. So it sounds to me like getting your salt intake shored up would diminish sort of weird craving-y sort of appetite cues, because our nutrient needs are met, hunger goes away. That's how the whole hunger satiety signal goes. I geek out on that stuff a lot. So I just thought that was a really interesting sort of way of thinking of that.
And I find that I'm just not so picky. Like I'm not, like I don't have that and also because we're so busy, so we're not really dropping into our bodies and having this body conversation like okay, so what is it that you really feel? It's just like, we kind of, so we open the fridge and then we get bombarded with all of these different, usually delicious things, as opposed to reaching for the water that should be mineralized naturally because it comes from a spring, but by putting just a grind of two. And in fact, so I do have an electrolyte. There's a brand in South Africa called Revive or Repower that's got Oryx Desert Salt in. And actually I was just on a workshop this weekend and somebody had a bottle, but she had the raw one, which has got no flavoring in it. And actually, I never used to drink water. So I'm so deeply grateful because now I can chug back 2 liters, or if I'm flying, I'll drink 4 liters of water with a full 1,000 milligrams of salt and magnesium and potassium in it. But I had her raw one and there was something. In fact, I'm actually going to stop the flavored ones because I've actually found they've got a bit too sweet for my palate.
Yeah.
And there was something so nourishing about the salt in the water. It was full and it was just really delicious. And again, so I think this is such a, even for me, I'm still learning, and I'm learning from other people. I met somebody at a lunch, like a networking lunch, and he told me that he'd been an insomniac since always. He'd always been an insomniac, and then he discovered Oryx, and he had heard somewhere that have it at night time for sleep, and so he started taking a teaspoon of salt with a little bit of honey last thing at night and first thing in the morning. And for the first time in his life, he sleeps through the night. That's his sleep medicine. So, but I think sometimes we get lazy, because even sometimes if I'm sleeping badly, yes, I could go to the kitchen because, again, food is medicine. You've got, if we've got an abscess or, we've had some mouth work or dental work or something, often it's like rinse your mouth with salt water, or if you've got a sore throat, gargle salt water. We have this, and actually I've had this experience myself. So just planting a seed for the next time somebody's got kind of like a gastro, but I'd moved to Cape Town and hadn't sort of built up my friends' network, and my kiddie was young, and ended up with this gastro, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and I'd been, up chucking for many hours, and I was starting to feel very concerned. I had this screeching headache. I was feeling so drained and depleted, didn't have anyone to call at 11 o'clock at night. And I suddenly realized, you've got salt in the kitchen. And so what I love about this time now, because electrolytes are really getting a lot of airtime, which is amazing, because what happened 10 years ago, when you got sick and you were vomiting and you were throwing up, your mom would then go to the pharmacy and buy you an electrolyte, which usually had a lot of sugar in it. So it was always something you took when you were dehydrated. And now electrolytes are saying, well, don't dehydrate, just stay hydrated all the time. Yeah. And suddenly I was like, oh, well, you've got salt in the kitchen. So I put quite a big teaspoon into some warm water, threw down a couple of headache tablets. I never threw up again. I never dry heaved again. I kept down the headache tablets and I fell asleep. So suddenly, because obviously it's antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial, it's a preservative. So whatever was, really upsetting my stomach suddenly, got killed off, got rehydrated, and fell asleep and woke up the next morning, not fine, but feeling still a bit fragile. Yeah. So I think those are some of those ancient wisdom, grandmother hacks.
It's so interesting. I'm really excited to experiment with salt. You got me excited to try your salt, because it's a pretty low stakes experiment. It's a natural compound that our body needs. And what if all these symptoms or experiences the body's queuing up is just a gentle call for something essential that we've always needed, and then just giving that back to the body again brings that balance, that homeostasis that is really our birthright. I'm obsessed with the idea that something simple like salt, which I mean, simple but also elegant and complex and spiritual and everything, but I'm just obsessed with the idea that it could be something very elemental like that our body's just been asking and asking for. I think that's amazing. I find that deeply empowering, because I think the wellness industry is so overcomplicated, so overblown, and we're running very ancient, software here. What if the solution was something very, very ancient
and very, very simple that's available? It's exactly that. If the oceans were clean, your salt could come from your local beach towel, the rocks. So it is available to us. So there's something that I've, I don't know why it took me so long, but something else that I've been doing. Have you heard of Soleil?
No.
Okay, so Soleil is, and actually I've got a whole researched article on this, but I think it's almost like liquid sunlight, because also the salt, it absorbs the sunlight, it crystallizes using the sun. So, it has that in it. So what Soleil is, if you take a glass jar and you fill it with hopefully, a lovely spring water or a good filtered water, and you put a lot of salt in it. So I put, maybe I use a liter. I love reusing. So I put a lovely glass jar from my yogurt. And then I use that as just glass jars around the house. So you fill it with your salt and then your spring water. And so there's always salt in the bottom. So it's fully saturated. So you can't, the salt water can't dissolve anymore. And in the mornings, I have a cup with half a lemon, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and then a tablespoon of that.
I have heard of this now that you mentioned it. Yes.
Fully mineralized and fully saturated. Yeah. There's some different quality. And again, I'm not a doctor. I can't give you. And I think there's also, maybe people like Dr. Zach Bush can kind of understand how it works in the body and something. But again, please just try it for yourself. You can go down to Whole Foods and I think it's $7.99 or $7.49 for a 3 No, it's bigger than that. I think it's 7 ounces or 8 ounces of salt. So it's really not a lot of money. And maybe by experimenting with mineralizing the body and taking in the salt that we know that we are, just go have a good cry, or go kiss your kitty's tears. It's salty. Yeah. So, replace that and start noticing and start feeling what a difference it's making.
I'm gonna try it. I'm very excited. I'm really excited. Your product is in Whole Foods, on Amazon. You said it's just interesting. It was really nice to hear sort of this soul mission of yours. I mean, the connection you have to salt is palpable. It is really, it feels like a calling. And I appreciate you teaching us so much about salt. And there's just so much more to learn. I'm fascinated by this mineral. I really am. These crystals.
And please, I really urge for people to try it for themselves and give us feedback, because, everyone is different. And if you're feeling depleted, try it and trust your body, trust your taste buds. And please let us know, because it's fascinating. Yeah, even, any younger teenagers who are struggling with menstrual cramps, as you're building up to having your cycle and your menstruation, you're losing a lot of blood. So it's only natural that you're going to need to take in more salt for your body to create your blood. So, in fact, there is a friend who started giving her daughter electrolytes, and suddenly the trouble and the pain subsided drastically from what it had been. So I really believe that salt is exactly what you said, Erin. It's the simple but complex mineral that is available. It's prevalent in the world. We are made up of, in fact, they say we're 70% water, but actually we're 70% saline solution. In fact, I did research at this the other day. So I think babies are around 75%, which makes sense. They're like, they're fully plump and they're fully hydrated. Yeah. And as we get older, it drops down to 60%. And I think, and it would be really interesting to, it would be lovely to do a, full case study on 1,000 people, see how much they're drinking salt water and how much more they could, we can hold. I wonder if that makes us old, is because we are depleting our hydration and depleting all of our minerals.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to consider. If there's some longevity, resilient aging thing that we're missing here by fearing salt and, harnessing the wisdom of babies, which are full of salt, and it makes sense to me that we're meant to preserve our salt equilibrium throughout life. There's no reason why we would become, insufficient over time. It doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't.
Gosh, there's so much to think about. I'm very excited. I've just pulled this up on Amazon. I'm going to order it right now. And Samantha, I'd love to know, are you active on social media? Is there a place people can follow you and learn more from you?
Thank you. I would say my most active platform personally, and my journey and growing a business from packing grinders on my dining room table to now being in 20 countries and across Whole Foods. And one thing I didn't tell you actually, which is really important, Samantha, tap. Yeah. So you can see the mechanism is white. So that is ceramic, which means that you only buy your grinder once and you just keep refilling it 4 years. For your $7.49 or your $6.99, I'm not sure what the price is, you only buy, and I had a chef message me the other day to say that after 8 years, she was throwing her grinders away. So it saves you a whole lot of money by not throwing grinders. It's saving the planet. Last year, we saved 816,900 bottles and heads from ending up in landfill. And most importantly, you are not grinding plastic into your food. So this is a very smooth, very easy grinder. As far as I can tell from my research and when I visit the US, I have not found another grinder on shelf that has a ceramic mechanism. They're all plastic or polycarb. And so you actually are grinding that scratchiness, that hard crankiness is because salt is so hard and abrasive. It's grinding the teeth away very microscopically. But at the beginning of your grinder, your salt will be finer crystals. And at the end, the bottom of your grinder, your crystals will be chunkier because the teeth have been ground into your food and you've eaten them. And then you go and throw it away and go buy another one. So you don't need to do that anymore. You just need to buy one bottle of Oryx and just keep refilling it with Oryx.
Amazing. Wow, you thought of everything. This is so cool. All right. So your main social feed, you were saying, is
LinkedIn. And my name is Samantha Skyring. So ring Ring in the Sky, Skyring is LinkedIn, but otherwise Oryx Desert Salt on Instagram. Yeah, I would say those are. Or there's also something really beautiful actually on our website. If you go sign up to our newsletter, we do have a Shopify site, but I think maybe a few people, if you live in the same community, you can bundle an order together, because I think the courier charge to Canada's a little bit pricey, but there is a discount there as well. But there's a beautiful PDF that we've put together called the Salt Essentials Guide, and it's everything you didn't know you need to know about salt. And there's the sacredness of salt, and there's the mythology and the history, and then it talks about salt and brain function and kidneys, and beautiful information on the website if you want to dive down a little bit deeper.
I'm absolutely downloading that. I'm going to share with my clients. oryxdesertsalt.com.
Thank you. That would be amazing.
Amazing. Oh, wow, Samantha, I really appreciate this conversation. It was so interesting, incredibly fun. I'm excited to try your salt. Really excited. Thanks for coming on.
For you too.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.